Hello and welcome to Witchy Wellness Radio. I'm your host, Loren, women's holistic health coach and fellow recovering perfectionist. This podcast was created to show you that your body is not in the way, it is actually leading your way. Hello, everybody, and again, you are listening to Witchy Wellness Radio, episode number 52, Medical Intuition with Julie Ryan, and I am your host, Loren. Welcome to the show today. I'm so happy you are here, and just a reminder for all you long-time or maybe new listeners for Witchy Wellness Radio, we are now featuring every single episode on YouTube. So if you dig what you're hearing and you want to see some goofy video and funny facial expressions, head over to YouTube and that'll be in our show notes as well. But today in the episode with Julie Ryan, Medical Intuition, we talk about her experience and what led her to become a psychic medical medium and what does that really mean. She's a serial entrepreneur, guys. She is a badass girl boss. She has started over 9 companies. Talk about serial entrepreneur. That is so awesome. We also talk about a wide range of things like the angelic attendants at death and what death really looks like and how society views death. And we offer both our perspectives of what that really looks like for us. And Julie offers us the 12 phases of transition. We have a link in the show notes that's on her website that really goes through the 12-step process we all go through as we transition to the other side. We also talk about the anatomy of a spirit, what she sees when she helps tune into somebody else's energetic field, body or without a body, and how she can help. And we also touch on the different teaching programs that Julie offers today. So without further ado, I'm so excited to bring you guys another beautiful episode of Witchy Wellness, number 52, Medical Intuition with Julie Ryan. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Witchy Wellness Radio, where you get to learn how your body is not actually in your way, but leading your way. And today we get to talk with the wonderful Julie Ryan. She is a psychic and medical intuitive. A little bit of her bio is that Julie is an inventor, an entrepreneur, and author who learned how to be a psychic and medical intuitive more than 25 years ago. After inventing a number of globally used surgical devices and founding 9 companies across the medical, long-term care, natural gas, advertising, and data policy industries, she settled from all of those into her talents as a psychic and medical intuitive. And writing her books, Angelic Attendants, What Really Happens to Us as we transition from this life into the next, and Angel Messages for Kids. And her podcast, Ask Julie Ryan, has listeners from all over the world, many of whom call in to partake in Julie's buffet of psychicness. Julie can sense what medical conditions and illnesses a person has and facilitate energetic healings. And she can tell how close someone is to dying and communicate with spirits, both alive and deceased. Julie can communicate with and medically scan animals, access people's past lives, and remove spirits from homes and buildings. She does it all. Welcome to the show, Julie.
Thanks so much, Loren. I'm delighted and honored to be with you.
Yeah, me too. And like Kiss from the Universe, Small World, we found out we grew up in the same neighborhood in the same city without knowing where either of us were from. I still live in the same city. And it's just, for me, it's like, oh, that's just like the serendipity. So I'm like, I know it's going to be a good show. We're going to get into everything woo. And how you went from 9 different companies to now becoming this psychic and medical intuitive. We start there? I mean, I'm sure it's a big, long story, but if you could give us the brief cliff notes.
I know. People say, what, are you just nuts or something? I go, yeah, probably. I'll probably have a little nuttiness. No, I'm just I'm an entrepreneur. So how it happened was, gosh, going on close to 30 years ago, Loren, I had a girlfriend give me a book for my birthday one year, and it was called Hands of Light. No, I go back. It was called Anatomy of the Spirit. That was the first one, by Carolyn Mays. And as you mentioned, I'm an inventor of surgical devices that are sold throughout the world, some of my inventions have been on the market for 30 years. And I met Carolyn Mays, called herself a medical intuitive. And I thought, what the heck is that? Because I'd been in the hospital supply industry for a long time at that point. And so I read her book and I wanted to know more. And so back then we didn't have the internet yet, and we certainly didn't have Amazon. Amazon hadn't been founded yet. So I did the old fashioned thing and I went to a bookstore. I went to a Barnes and Noble, and I thought, I'm going to see if there's anything available. And I purposely went to the bookstore because I thought a library maybe is going to be more conservative and isn't going to have as much of this kind of woo-woo stuff in it. So I went to a bookstore, a Barnes and Noble, and I found a book called Hands of Light by Barbara Brennan. And Barbara Brennan is a former NASA physicist who's taken very complex quantum physics principles and basically converted them into understanding a person like me could understand. And so she talked about using energy fields for healing and things that we could do to facilitate healing with energy. And I thought, God, that would be so cool if we could do that in conjunction with Western medicine and even Eastern medicine for that matter, as we know it. So I read her book and I wanted to know more. So I called her school that was on Long Island at the time. And I said, do you have anybody teaching this material where I live? And sure enough, they did. And so I studied with a woman for 6 years who was a graduate of Barbara Brennan's program. And that was, gosh, over 25 years ago. And now I teach people how to do all the stuff that I do. I just finished a class right before we came on. I was telling you, I just finished a class literally 10 minutes ago. And I limited it to 12 people. We had 12 people in 4 countries. And we do it in 4 weeks. We do it 2 hours on 4 Saturdays in a row. And I'm able to help them do all the stuff that I do. Kind of like how technology advances, before we didn't have phones, we used carrier pigeons, then we got phones, then we got whatever. After 30 years of doing this work, I know the shortcuts and I know how to teach other people to do what I do.
Beautiful. So it was just that one book that you got
triggered
that
it.
and that's what I tell people when they listen to this show or they find a good book, to share it. Because you never know what that's going to spark in somebody else.
Exactly. Yeah. And that was a birthday gift. And there's a story in my book, Angelic Attendants. I talk about how my girlfriend gave me that book. And then 10 years later, her daughter died. And I helped her get through that grief and communicate with her deceased daughter, still do. But there's no way that we would have known when she gave me that book that 10 years later I'd be using these skills that I developed because she spurred my interest in this topic to help her when she lost her own child. I mean, there's no way. I don't believe there are any coincidences in life. Like you and I both grew up in the same town.
Yeah. Small world, but is it?
I know. Exactly.
Yeah. And I think, it's Joseph Campbell, what he says is follow your bliss.
Exactly.
The hero's journey. And you don't, I think a lot of people, they see somebody like you who's been doing this awesome career their whole life, like, oh, that sounds cool, but what am I going to do? And it's as simple as what excites you, follow that and just keep following that. You never know where you're going to end up.
Well, right when I graduated from college, to your point, I went to work for a big hospital supply company. And then I did that for a few years. And then at 25, I started my first company, and it was in the hospital supply industry. And then I started these other companies in other industries, and people would say to me, how do they relate? And I'd say, well, I take money that I make from one company and I start another company. I see an opportunity and these ideas come to me, and so I investigate them, and if it makes sense and I come up with a way that I think I can create a company, or I'm led to do something like that, I do it. And then but we're so conditioned to be conformists, to think, okay, this is what your degree is in, this is what your whole life's gonna do. My degree is in communication. How does a girl with a degree in communication invent surgical devices? It doesn't compute to most people. But to your point, it's whatever you're interested in, follow it. And then the people that we need to show up and the situations we need to show up always show up at the exact right time. You take one step at a time, one step at a time. And there was I just talked about this in my class. There's a song out of the new Frozen 2, which is such a great movie. If you haven't seen it, or if your listeners haven't seen it, oh my gosh, it's so spiritual. And it's called The Next Right Thing. And in it, in the lyrics, and I just have to happen to have this handy because I just talked about this in my class. Let me put my glasses on. Let me find them. In it, it says, how do I rise from the floor? Just do the next thing. Take a step, step again. That's all I do. I won't look too far ahead. That's when we get paralyzed, because our brains can't imagine all the potential outcomes and all the variables that are going to come into play. And she says, I'm just going to, it's too much for me when I look too far ahead. So I'm just going to make the choice to hear the voice and do the next right thing. And then the other song that I love from Frozen, I'm a huge Frozen 2 fan. I love the first movie, but the second one, maybe even better. They talk about Into the Unknown. And the lyrics from that song are fabulous as well. And it talks about we go into the unknown, and it's where we're led. And, you move through that fear and you go into the unknown, and that's the adventure. And that's what makes life exciting and fun,
And
too.
fun. It's supposed to be fun.
Yeah,
Well, I'm
exactly.
going to
I
have to watch
agree.
Frozen now. Yeah.
Oh, I'm telling you, it's terrific. Watch it and pay attention to those two songs, Into the Unknown and then The Next Right Step. They both are just perfect for, how to navigate our lives and live a life of joy and fun and abundance in every area.
Yeah. Abundance is not just money.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Oh, beautiful. Um, so looping back to medical intuition, what does that mean?
Right.
I
So
feel like in
it's,
my world, it's a catchphase now. Now, maybe
yeah,
20 years
yeah,
ago it wasn't, but you have, the big name you think about is Anthony William.
right.
And
Yeah,
that whole, the whole celery juice thing has just gone out the
that's
roof.
right. Yeah. He's got a great marketing program,
He
doesn't he?
does.
He's got like,
Where can we
I have
sign
a
up for
friend
that?
I have a friend who knows him and says he's got 20 people on his team. That's why you see him everywhere, because
Oh
he's
yeah.
just marketing the daylights out of it. And good for him
Yeah.
that he's getting information out there. Medical intuition, as I understand it, is I connect energetically to a person's spirit anywhere in the world. Most of the work I do is long distance. 99.99999% of the time I'm not with a person when I'm scanning them. And so I've learned how to raise my vibrational level to the level of spirit. This is what I teach in my class. It's kind of, I talk in analogies a lot, Loren, because it gives our human mind a frame of reference. And my analogy for what I teach is, if we can teach a person to read, whether that be a child or a teenager or an adult, they can access any kind of information they want that's in the written word. Likewise, if I can teach somebody how to communicate with spirit, they can access universal intelligence, right, in any way. And we're all spirits connected to a body having a human experience. And everything's made out of energy, vibrating at different frequencies, if you will, different speeds. So I'm sitting in my office at my big cherry desk, and it feels very solid. I know it's made of energy. I know it's vibrating more slowly than the energy we're using to communicate via wireless right now, via the internet. So by raising my vibrational level to the level of spirit, I'm able to connect with any spirit attached to a body who's somebody's having a human experience, or any spirit that isn't attached to a body. That would be somebody who's deceased. And the spirit is the power source for the body, which is why when somebody dies, their spirit and their body separate and the body don't work anymore because it doesn't have a power source. So when our spirit is connected to a body, we vibrate more slowly simply because the body has mass. It would be like running an electrical current through a bowl of pudding. It's going to slow it down because it's got to get through that mass, right? So by connecting to someone's spirit anywhere in the world, I'm able to scan their body, and it's as if I have a hologram of them in my mind's eye, and I'm looking at an MRI or a CT scan or an X-ray. I can see in my mind's eye broken bones, torn ligaments, viral infections, bacterial infections, cancer, I mean, whatever. And I'm able to not only identify things that are going on, but then I witness energetic healings that happen. Immediately they come in, and they can take the form of something getting added, something getting removed. I watch procedures all the time that emulate what I saw in operating rooms for all those decades. I was in and out of operating rooms. I see procedures that emulate other medical providers' procedures, like if you go to the chiropractor, or you go to physical therapy, or you go to whatever, the dentist, and they're doing a root canal. I see that all the time too. And sometimes I see healings, Loren, that utilize methodologies and devices that haven't been invented yet. But nevertheless, I'm very descriptive with my client in what I'm seeing, because if you can envision what I'm seeing in my mind's eye, it's going to help integrate the healing into your body. Similar to, you know this, the body's going to follow what the brain tells it. And an analogy I use for that is, we've all seen a scary movie at some point in our lives. And even though our mind knows that it's pretend, our heart may feel like it's going to jump out of our chest at any given moment because it's so scary. Well, that's a great example of what happens in these healings. And the healing may be realized immediately. You may feel a difference in symptoms. It may take days, weeks, months. You may need some kind of complementary care, like go see a chiropractor, go see the dentist, have surgery, whatever. I believe what I do complements Western medicine and Eastern medicine too, for that matter. And at the end of the day, it's everyone's spirit's prerogative to utilize the healing in a way that's going to best facilitate what they want to experience in this lifetime. That's not just with this, that's with everything. Where do you live? What do you do for a living? What kind of car do you drive? Who do you date? Who do you marry? Every decision we make helps us experience and explore whatever we want to explore in this lifetime. So that's the work that I do. Different from Anthony William, he doesn't do so many healings. He identifies stuff more. So I identify, but then a healing always occurs. And in an hour, when I have a private session with somebody, we can cover a lot of territory, a lot. They may have a bunch of stuff going on. Interestingly enough, the energy always goes where it's most needed first. So even if that's asymptomatic, the energy will go there.
And what you were saying, it's an energetic level of healing.
Oh yeah, exactly.
And how I envision it is almost like a river or a creek, and sometimes there's a dam. There's some twigs that are maybe clustered together, and it's
Right.
going to block that flow.
That's right.
And
That's right.
So if you could maybe explain what that looks like, or how.
That is a portion of the healing that I do. I usually do that last with most people. Sometimes I do it first, but the work that I do as a medical intuitive is very much physiological first on an energetic level. So I'm using quantum physics, I'm using energy to help facilitate the body healing.
Mm-hmm.
And the healings that I watch in my mind's eye are metaphors for what's happening energetically, so my human brain can understand what I'm seeing. So if I was going to scan you, let's say, just as an example, I might see inflammation in your right shoulder. That would look like a red ball of energy to me. I would get that calmed down with blue energy. And again, I've done this on tens of thousands of people around the world for decades, all right? So I have my own system. But I'll do that. And then I can see underneath that once I remove the inflammation. It's going to help you feel better, first of all. And a lot of my clients can feel stuff when I'm working on them at the same time because my spirit, again, is connected to their spirit. So we have an energetic connection so they can feel that. But like when we drive on a foggy day or a foggy night, it occludes our vision. So I got to get rid of that inflammation so I can see what's going on underneath it. In my class, we just did a group healing on one of the students' daughter who had a rotator cuff tear. And so she had inflammation. We got underneath the inflammation. We saw the rotator cuff tear. We watched it get sutured. And that's the energetic healing that's going to help facilitate her body healing itself. So I believe it's spirit working through me. To your point with energy blocks, the body and the spirit made of energy need to be in some kind of a container. The container I call the energy field membrane. It reminds me of a plastic bag of really thin, stretchy plastic. And that's the container that holds, if energy is going to be used for a specific purpose, like electricity is going to power your house, it's got to be in a container. It's in a wire. Natural gas that heats your house in the winter, it's in a pipe, right? So that energy comes in a container. That container is the energy field membrane. When I see it tear a hole in that energy field membrane, it's allowing an energy leak. Energy leaks always precede any kind of medical condition. Energy leaks, to your point, are caused by an emotional event in this lifetime or a past life that causes an energy block. The energy block builds pressure, causes a blowout in the membrane. I go into that tear, that hole, I'll see it in the membrane when I'm scanning somebody, and I'm shown some kind of a scene, like a little mini movie in my head. And if it's this lifetime, I'll get what the year was, how old you were, a little bit about what went on. If it's past life, same thing. I'll get where did you live, here's the year, all of that. As soon as we illuminate it, it clears the block that you mentioned. When we clear the block, the membrane heals itself. The body can go back to working on full power, and it helps heal and it helps maintain health. So an analogy I use for this energy field membrane is, imagine going to the pet store and buying a goldfish. They're going to put the goldfish in a plastic bag of water in order for you to get it home, right? So you got a picture of that goldfish in that plastic bag in your head. The goldfish represents our body. The water represents our spirit because the body's inside the spirit. I'll talk about that in a minute. And the plastic bag represents our energy field membrane. So if there's a pinhole in that plastic bag and water's draining out a drop at a time, for a long time, that fish is going to be okay. But when enough water drains out, that fish is going to be in trouble. And that's what happens to the human body when there's a tear or hole in the energy field membrane over long periods of time. The body's not working on full power, and that's when disease and illness can set in. So that's a long answer to your short question,
No,
girl.
that's why I have beautiful people like you on here. They're passionate.
Yeah,
They know what they're talking
yeah.
about, and you can just feel it. And
Well, about the spirit and the body, can I
yes,
talk about that
that's
just
what I
real
was going to ask.
quickly? Yeah, yeah. You know how, I don't know about you, I was raised Roman Catholic, 12 years Catholic schools. I was taught the spirit is someplace in the chest area, in the soul, the spirit, same thing, right? That's not what I perceive. What I perceive is that the spirit is the main part of us, the everlasting part. The body goes inside of it, but it's all holographic. Interestingly enough, if you look at a religious painting, what do they have around their religious person? A halo around their head or their whole body, right? That's their aura. That's their energy field. Painters from long ago could see it. I can see it when I turn my abilities on and off. I turn them on and off at will. I don't walk around scanning people because I don't think it's ethical to do that. Not to mention, I don't want to know. That'd be a lot of information I don't need to know. So if you think about if you ever had an EEG or an EKG, what are they testing? Your energy field on the outside of your body, right? They put those electrodes on you and they're They're in your energy field doing that. So I find that interesting that we've somehow gone from what I'm seeing, that the body's inside the, the spirit, to, oh, the spirit's just this little thing and it's inside your chest. That's not what I perceive at all.
And I think for me, going through my own spiritual journey, perceiving, we're not, this is a Rumi quote, we're not just one drop in the ocean, we're the entire ocean in one drop.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
And
Well, we're all a spark of the divine.
mhm.
We're all made in the image and likeness of God. And most people think God looks like Father Time, some old man with white hair and a beard sitting on a throne someplace on a cloud. That's not what I perceive. Even after 12 years of Catholic school, what I perceive now at this point is we're all made in the image and likeness of God in spirit form. We're all a spark of the divine. We all have this ability to tap into universal intelligence. We all have this ability to heal. We all have this ability to help heal others. And so I think it's how we perceive things that have been talked about for millennia in some cases. And a lot of times that's been distorted. Things have been distorted over the years, primarily to control the masses. That you think about civilizations and religions, well, what's their number one motivator? Fear, right? When somebody dies, are they going to fly or are they going to fry? We all have that fear. And I'm here to tell you, everybody goes to heaven, like all dogs go to heaven too. There was a movie out probably before you were born called All
No,
Dogs
I
Go to Heaven.
remember that well. I probably at one
Yeah.
point in time I memorized the entire movie.
Yeah, okay, there you go.
Um, I guess that's a great segue to asking, talking about death.
Yeah,
And our culture, it's like, and people are so fear-based of like, I need to
right,
get X, Y, Z done, go, 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 go before my clock runs out.
right.
Versus maybe a more Eastern perspective would be maybe not this lifetime, but maybe next or the
Yeah,
next.
right.
So could you kind of talk to us about your experience? I mean, you wrote a whole book on it,
Uh,
and you help
Yeah,
people through
yeah.
that, whether they're a loved one or the person transitioning. Please enlighten us with your view on, well, really rebirth.
Well, first of all, time doesn't exist in the spirit world. Time is a human concoction. So linear time as we know it, I mean, I think the Romans invented the calendar. And so when you think about time doesn't exist, 100 years may not even be a blip on the radar in the spirit world. And I equate it to going to Disneyland. A lifetime is like, okay, I'm gonna explore what it's like to ride the teacups. So you go ride the teacups, and then in your next life, you go over and you ride the Matterhorn. It's all the same trip to us as humans, but I'm going to explore the teacups and the Matterhorn and the, Space Mountain and all of that. Those are all different lifetimes of exploration. So that's the first thing to remember. The other thing is we can't make a wrong decision because everything unfolds perfectly in our lives, and it all has to do with what do we want to explore. There's no judgment in the spirit world. Spirit just sees it as an experience, and every experience is fun, which is hard for us to wrap our human heads around because we look at things that are horrific and we think, how could that be fun? But from a spirit perspective, when you think it's maybe a nanosecond, a lifetime in the spirit world, and they think, oh, I want to explore what it's like to, you know, die in a car accident because maybe in a previous life they lost somebody in an accident of some kind, or maybe they were a EMS person rescuing people that were in accidents, or who knows. But that's the main thing to remember. We cannot make a wrong decision in anything in our life because it's all unfolding perfectly. It's all benefiting us in some way. What a freeing concept that is, number one. Number two, when we die, and that's the thing that so many people are afraid of. They're afraid of, heaven and hell and that whole concept. Everybody goes to heaven. But the other concept they're afraid of is what's going to happen as I'm dying. There are lots of books out there about the afterlife. There are lots of books out there about near-death experiences. There's not much information out there about what actually happens as we're dying. And that's what my book, Angelic Attendants, is about. And I talk in that book, Loren, about how we're surrounded by angels and deceased loved ones when we're dying. And there's a configuration that happens. Everybody goes through it, whether they die instantly, like in the case of a homicide or a suicide, or whether it's stretched out over days, weeks, months, years. I have a gal that called into my show for 2 years, and her father was in phase 11 of 12. I call it the 12 phases of transition. And it's a configuration that angels and deceased loved ones assume, and I can scan anybody anywhere in the world, and in a second, I can tell how close to death they are. I can communicate with the person telepathically. We can find out where the will is, what their funeral wishes are. It's amazing the things that people ask me to find out from their loved ones, even when they can't communicate. But the most interesting thing I find about the 12 phases of transition is it's based on what I believe originated as a 5th century Gregorian chant, and it's called In Paradisum. It's a prayer said at the end of every Catholic funeral. And it talks about the angels and your loved ones will greet you and lead you into paradise. That's what I see in the 12 phases of transition. So when I was writing the book, I did some research, and that's the best I could find where it originated. And so I have to believe that people from the beginning of time have been able to see what I see telepathically, psychically. And perhaps it took till the 5th century for someone to be well educated enough that they could write this down in the form of a prayer as a chant. And certainly some of the most well educated people were in monasteries, and they were men back then. And so I find that fascinating that this ancient prayer describes perfectly what I see when I'm scanning somebody who's dying. May I tell you how the whole idea came to me about writing the book?
Of
That's kind of a
course.
fun
That's why you're on
story.
here. Is this story time?
Yeah, that's a fun story. The first time I saw all this happen was with my own mother. And I thought, oh my God, am I hallucinating? Am I seeing this? Whatever. And at her funeral, of course, it was a Catholic funeral, they said the prayer in Paradisum. And I'm sitting in church, Lauren, and I'm thinking, holy moly, this is exactly what I saw. Oh, goodness. So that fast forward a few years, I was with my mentor and teacher because I do healings on people all over the world. She's the only one that zaps on me, does healings on me. And I may have to find somebody else soon because she's 80. So hopefully she'll be around for a long time. But she works on me. And when she's doing a healing on me, my deceased loved one's spirits are in the room. I lay face up on a massage table, and my parents and my grandmother and my deceased sister and other loved ones lie in the side of the table, and they participate in the healing. One day this dead pope shows up, hit the spirit of a dead pope. Whole pope outfit, the hat, the whole 9 yards. And I said to him, well, who are you? And he said, I'm Clement. And I said, there was a Pope Clement? I never heard of a Pope Clement. Susan, my mentor, who's Catholic also, had never heard of a Pope Clement. She goes, I think so. And I said, there was a Pope Clement. And he laughed and he said, yeah, I was number 6. I said, okay, fine. May I help you? He said, yeah, you just need to teach the world about what happens when somebody dies, because everybody's so afraid and it's ridiculous. It's been misconstrued and misinterpreted and used for various reasons to control people. And people are afraid, and you need to teach people what happens when they die. And so I said to him, no, you don't understand. I'm not doing that. I'm a businesswoman. People are going to think I'm nuts. So I'm, arguing with this dead Pope spirit. And he laughed and he said, yeah. Whatever you've gone through, your career has gotten you ready to do this stuff that you need to teach the world. So I'm like, yeah, whatever. I'm not doing that. So I get in my car to leave, Loren. I'm in the parking lot and I Google Pope Clement VI, just for kicks. And I learned he was in office during the bubonic plague, when 2/3 of Europe died, and he's best known for his prayers for the dying and his prayers for the dead. And I thought, Ryan, you can't make this stuff up. I mean, I never heard of a Pope Clement, and this guy's like of all people who could come to me and say, you got to teach people what happens when they're dying. I mean, he's the poster child for it. So that's just one of many stories in this woo-woo adventure I've been in that, you know, that I could tell.
Well, could you kind of bring us through those 12 stages or phases of
Yeah.
transition?
Yeah. Yeah. And by the way, there are graphics of this. There are images of the 12 phases on my website, askjulieryan.com. So anybody that's listening that wants to see them, go to askjulieryan.com, click on the 12 phases of transition, and you'll see. Here's what they look like. Here's what the chart looks like. And so what happens is, as I mentioned, that the body and the spirit they're holographic. The body is inside the spirit. So the spirit and the body, when somebody's dying, the spirit separates from the body and hangs on to the top of the head, and it looks like a cartoon caption. It's like the bubble that you'll see in a cartoon where the words or the thoughts of the character are. And then as they progress closer to death, there are spirits of deceased loved ones that show up. The mother, closest maternal spirit of a person who's deceased to them, comes in first, then the paternal spirit. But the maternal spirit is the one that runs the show from the spirit world, which is wild. I I mean, I never in a million years would have anticipated that, but that's what happens. I've seen it. I can't even tell you how many hundreds of times. And so, for instance, my mother's deceased. So if I was dying, it would be my mother who would come in first and run the show in the spirit world. If my mother was still alive, it would be my maternal grandmother. If she was still alive, it would be my maternal grandmother's mother. It's always down the maternal line, which is interesting for those of us that are mothers, because we think we're done with our kids, raising our kids, and really helping them uh, when they're raised, when they're grown up. But we're helping them from the spirit world transition back into non-physical, transition to
Another
heaven.
birth.
Another birth. Yeah, great analogy. So then what happens is the maternal spirit calls in angels, and these are angels that look to me like big old angels. I mean, they got big wings, they are wearing white gowns, they're luminous, and they're big. They're between 6 and 7 feet tall, and they form a circle around the person who's dying. Now, it's important to note that that's how I perceive angels, because I saw lots of statues and pictures of angels growing up that depicted them that way. Somebody who grows up in a different culture, perhaps in a indigenous tribe in the Himalayas or something, may see angel energy as a purple ball of energy, or as a golden retriever, or who knows.
Yeah,
But
I
that's
see
how
I see
I,
orbs. So, yeah.
yeah,
I grew up Catholic,
orbs.
but I see light, different color light.
Okay. Orbs are spirits. Orbs are spirits, like the orb that Glenda the Good Witch comes into Munchkinland in The Wizard of Oz. That kind of an orb, or you see an orb in a picture. A photograph, sometimes a family photograph or a photograph of people. People send me pictures all the time. I'll say, "Who's in this?" Well, it's Grandma Jones, or it's whoever we can identify them. But yeah, so you may see angels, in an orb that are a bunch of different colors, or a certain color, or whatever. It's how we perceive is the way that spirit communicates to us so that our human mind can make sense of it. So angels surround the person. The maternal and paternal spirit are the anchor to that circle. As the person approaches death, that circle opens up into a horseshoe, eventually into a straight line across the feet of the person. Then as the person is approaching death, like middle stages, phase 6 or so, deceased loved ones spirits show up. And then deceased pet spirits show up. With my own mother, when she was dying, dogs we had as kids, their spirits were in the room. I was like, what? I thought, am I hallucinating this? But nope. Our white German Shepherd Frosty was there, and our Chow Dog, and our Shotzi, our Dachshund, was there. And I saw spirits of other dogs too, that I figured were dogs that my mom had when she was growing up. And at her funeral, I asked her brother, my Uncle Bob, I said, I saw this, what looked like a, like a Australian Shepherd kind of dog. Well, yeah, that dog's name was, I don't know, whatever it was, Romy or something. And I described these dogs to him, and he had a name for everyone. He knew everyone. So they're the pet spirits, every pet we've ever had in our lifetime, their spirit is there. Interesting when I see farm animal pets in the room. I can always tell someone has either grown up on a farm or lived on a farm. And I'll say, did your mom grow up on a farm? Because I'm seeing cows and ducks and pigs and stuff like that. They'll say, oh, yeah. And I'll describe maybe a cow that looks like a dairy cow. And they'll say, oh, yeah, that. I had one woman say, yeah, that was my mom's pet cow named Molly. I mean, it's wild. You can't make this stuff up. It's just too out there. So then when someone is ready at the end, then angels are on either side of the spirit bubble, and their wings start to move. Again, a metaphor for what's really happening, right? So I can understand it in my human mind. And it causes a vortex above the head that spins very fast. Imagine looking like a tornado cloud, funnel cloud, like with a tornado. And it has an upward pull, and that helps the spirit in the body, the spirit evacuate from the body. And the upward pull reminds me of being in a car wash. When you stay in the car and you get to the end and there's the dryer and it's sucking all the water off your car, that's what it feels like. And so that helps the spirit evacuate from the body, and then angels carry the spirit to heaven, which looks like a big plasma wall of bright white yellow light to me that they pass through. And then when they pass through it, it immediately closes up. The interesting thing about this vortex that forms above the person who's dying's head, I remember when I saw it with my own mother, I thought, oh, for heaven's sakes, this is a spiritual thing with angels' wings that's causing a phenomenon that I can feel in my human body, and it's helping separate. So when I was writing my book, I looked it up, and it reminded me, the movement of the angels' wings, of a giant owl. It's almost like, if you've ever seen a documentary on a giant owl, you can almost feel the drag that their big wings, moving, create. And so I Googled owl wings vortex. Oh my God, Loren, there are tens of thousands of hits on what's called the wingtip vortex. Every plane, every bird, every insect, every kite, anything that flies, there's a wingtip vortex that forms underneath the wings, and it causes an upward lift. So again, here's a scientific explanation for what I'm seeing from in the spirit world. And it's important to note that these 12 phases can happen instantly, or it can take long periods of time, but everybody goes through them.
That's beautiful. And I love how science backs up these
Oh, I know.
spirit world woo-woo things. Like I
I know.
mentioned it a couple times on the show because I was so excited about it. I was reading this article that was quoting the scientific journal that did research on epigenetics.
Yeah.
So genes that pass from one generation to the next. And they actually proved that an event or emotional response can be passed down 13 generations.
Right.
Which
Right.
is, in my opinion, is like why we choose to be in this body, in this family, in this city, or because it sets you up for these conditions that you want to
Right.
experience.
Right. Put your life on a trajectory.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. I agree with that. Interestingly enough, speaking of DNA and genes, I watch DNA healings all the time happen to my clients. And the longer I do this, the more advanced the healings are that come in on this medical intuitive stuff. So I watch genetic mutations get corrected in the DNA, and the DNA is the recipe that tells the cells how to behave. So I have amassed over the years a bunch of advisors, and when I see a healing that I don't quite know what it is, I'll call one of my advisors who's a surgeon or a physician or a geneticist or a scientist or whatever. I'll say, what am I seeing? So the first few times I saw this genetic healing, I called it DNA healing, and I literally watched the letters that represent nucleic acids, ATCG, that's in every strand of DNA. A strand of DNA can have 1,000 letters. It can have hundreds of thousands of letters. I watch them get rearranged, like watching a Scrabble game in warp speed. So I called a buddy of mine who's a world-renowned geneticist, and I said, "What am I seeing?" And he told me, and he said, "There are 5 research institutes in the world studying this. Nobody's seen it. Nobody can prove it right now. It's a hypothesis, and there's no way you would know about it." And I said, "Well, obviously I do, because I just described it to you." And so now whenever I see him or talk to him, he wants to know, okay, what are you seeing? What's happening? And it's just fantastic, the energetic stuff that we can tap into through consciousness that helps facilitate healings in the human body. And then again, it's that person's spirit's choice how they want to integrate that healing or not. But by tapping into that same consciousness, we can do past life stuff. We can talk to dead people. I mean, who do you want to talk to? We can talk to Napoleon. We can talk to Mother Teresa. We can talk to whomever. And just that fast. It's really fascinating, and it's fun.
I was thinking through all of this and kind of bringing it back to medical intuition of somebody who kind of doesn't want to experience fully this lifetime, whether it's trauma or is very empathic and is kind of it's not fully embodied in themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of people listening to this show would consider themselves empathic or sensitive.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of tips or what would you do to help somebody like that to be able to actually be present and feel in the spiritual vehicle?
When we ask a question to spirits communicate telepathically. So their answer is going to come in. It's going to feel like a thought in your head. Most people will discount it and they'll go, "Oh, that's just my thought." But if it comes in within a second, as fast as you can snap your finger, that's spirit talking to you. If you think about it for more than a couple of seconds, that's going to be your brain talking to you. All right. The other thing to remember, Loren, is that spirits are super, super, super literal. They're always going to give you the right answer. How applicable the answer is, the information is that they give us, is all based on how we ask the question. Let me give you an example. One of the people that was in my class that I just finished is supposed to go on a 3-week cruise to Europe. We got all this coronavirus stuff going on. And so one of her options is she can delay the cruise. She and her husband can delay the cruise for a year. So she was asking Spirit, is it in my best interest to take the cruise June 3rd to all these countries? I said, you got to add the year, because the answer is going to come in, is it in my best interest to take this cruise June 3rd? That could be any June 3rd for the rest of your life, right? And interestingly enough, the class as a group got a different answer, some of them, when she asked the question the first way than they did when she asked the answer the second way. And so it was fascinating. And I'll use the example of anything. You want to be specific. Name the date. If you say, will I enjoy the concert? Tell the date, where it's going to be, who's performing. Because otherwise, am I just going to enjoy the concert? That could be any concert for the rest of your life. They're always going to answer correctly. How applicable it is going to be predicated on how you ask the question. So anybody can do that. Anybody can do that.
Well, beautiful. I could just talk for hours about this kind of stuff, but I do want to be mindful of our listeners' time. We covered so much, but was there anything else you wanted to cover to kind of wrap up our discussion today?
No, just, just my books have a lot of information. Angelic Attendants, you can find them anywhere you buy books. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, AskJulieRyan.com. There are links there. I released a children's book right before Christmas, Loren. I had a lot of moms and grandmothers ask me to write a children's book because so many little children remember past lives, and they're trying to explain to them, how does that work? And how do you explain to a child, even to an adult, okay, grandma's body is in the casket at that funeral home, but we're telling them grandma's in heaven, and the 3-year-old's saying, that just doesn't make sense, Mom. So it's a picture book. I think it has 17 sentences in the whole book, but the illustrations are great. It's called Angel Messages for Kids. It talks about how we're spirits connected to a body and all of that in understandable English. And so that's fun. My class, anybody that's interested in learning more about this, anybody can do this work. It's all learned. I learned how to do all this stuff. I am not one of those psychics who's had dead people chasing her since childhood, or if I did, I didn't know it. And so I learned how to do all this stuff. And I have students, Loren, I'll do the class 4 times a year. I have students that are all walks of life. I've had construction workers, housewives, several physicians, several professors, several lawyers. I mean, it's just all across the board. Every industry you can think of. One of my favorite is I have a gal who has an archery camp, and she lives in Louisiana, and she teaches people how to hunt with bow and arrow, and then she does this trip every year to Canada, and they go hunt bear with bow and arrow. She took my class, and I said, what are you going to use this for? She goes, are you kidding? I'm going to use it to, as an extra GPS system in my head. I mean, you can use it for absolutely anything. And when people learn to have a high vibration, that's what I teach, it's amazing how their life unfolds. The abundance, like you mentioned before, comes in every form. And people walk around after they've taken my class and they say, I'm just happy all the time. And there's not even any main reason, but it's because they're swimming in this high vibration. And when they get in a low vibration and they feel a negative emotion, they have tools now to get out of it and get out of it immediately. So it's really fun.
That's wonderful. I know when I'm in that flow state or that high vibration, I see opportunities and I see that
Right.
abundance.
Right.
Whether if I wasn't, it could have just walked right on by.
That's right.
But thank you again, Julie, for coming on. This was such a pleasure talking with you. And we are so grateful for you and showing up for yourself, but for all your beautiful clients and all of our spirits and souls. And how may we, the listeners, be of service for you in return?
Go to my site, check out my site, askjulieryan.com. Consider taking my class. It will change your life in untold ways positively. And however, follow me on Instagram. I'm at Ask Julie Ryan. Facebook is Ask Julie Ryan. Just become part of this community. It's really an extraordinary group that I get to hang with, of people that are interested in all of this, what I call woo woo kind of stuff. And it's really, boy, it just enhances our lives in just countless ways.
Yes, it does. And like you said, no one is too special not to be able to do these things.
Oh,
That
everybody has the ability.
we
It's
all
just
have the
learning to reawaken it. Yeah.
mhm.
Because we shut it down when we're little kids and people tell us, oh, honey, that's just your imagination. That's not really real. And it is. So it's reawakening the abilities that we all come in with.
Yes, and thank you. That's a beautiful gift to send and give to humanity. So thank you again for coming on the show.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.